Bajashig, welcome. Monique Minach and Dishnakas, Kidikanik and Nishnabek and Dojiba. My name's Monique Minach, and I'm a member of the Algonquins of Barrier Lake, and this is InDigital Insights. And today we're speaking with Melanie Sampson. Melanie is a graphic artist. She was raised in Happy Valley, Goose Bay, and now she lives in Nova Scotia. And you do all kinds of things. You do topography, digital graphics. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I do. It's so lovely to be here with you, Monique. First of all, thank you for having me. It's one of those things where I feel like I never really had one idea of what I wanted to do. I just sort of tried a few things here and there along the way and hope to achieve something. Just creative outlet is how it all started, and I hope that's kind of how it always stays is a creative outlet, right? The joy of it, the fun of it, and that's really how it all began with greeting cards of all things.
I've seen them. They're absolutely lovely.
Thank you.
They're beautiful. The style of them. There's the Northern Lights. There's a few different ones that I've seen, and I just wow. Well, we'll be talking after.
It's one of those things. I keep it on my website that I started making greeting cards when I was about 4, and I still have some. My parents kept some, bless them. But it just sort of started from there, and I was just I think always a creative kid, and I was also a very science minded kid, and I it was something that was sort of always that duality growing up was being interested in chemistry, physics, biology, but also wanting to draw, even though I still maintain that I can't draw, but I always enjoyed that fun of it, the imagination side of it just hooked me at a young age, and it never really stopped. So later in life, my career path took me in a few different directions, and landed now. I'm very grateful to be a self-employed artist.
That's terrific. You also worked in radio. How did that happen?
I did. I spent the bulk of my career in radio. It's where I learned a lot of my digital skills. It was, the industry changed so much over the nearly 20 years that I spent in it. And I was in geology before that. So there's sort of this confluence of interests. It's going to school was what brought me to Nova Scotia to start with. I went to Acadia here in the Annapolis Valley, where I'm back living now, and I did a degree in geology, and I worked with that for a summer, and I got way too many bug bites and thought, I don't think I'm cut out for this. I was lucky enough to work in a couple of different spots in Labrador just over that summer, and I had sort of had to make a decision of, am I going to continue in this job with what was most likely going to be mining work there, or will I go to this school that I found in the Annapolis Valley that did radio and television arts? And I was actually sitting in a boardroom in St. John's, and I was offered a contract position to work in a mine, and I turned it down and accepted to go to school. And I initially was going to do journalism, and then I got tugged into the radio side, as a lot of radio folk will tell you, that you just sort of get drawn in, and off I went. So I worked in several radio stations and around the Maritimes, and landed back here in the Annapolis Valley. And I decided to leave that career back in this end of summer of 2022. And I've been turning my hobby into my career ever since.
That's amazing. That gives me such hope.
Oh,
Yeah, I actually worked at the Annapolis Valley radio station there, that network.
isn't that incredible? I
Yeah, I
love to
was
hear
there
that.
twice actually for about 4 years altogether, living in Kentville. But first time I lived in Port Williams, like just by Acadia, by Wolfville.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, it's gorgeous out there. I
So
just,
lovely.
yeah. Um, and yeah, the allure of radio. But eventually, I also decided that, okay, I wanted to do something more creative,
It's
which
certainly not as easy, is it, as it seems on the outside when you're in radio. I always found that was the one thing that people still talk to me about. If I'm out at craft fairs and markets, I will always have somebody, oh, I knew you from the radio or something, which is just lovely. People are so sweet. But the one thing was I had no idea. Like they say a lot, I had no idea what was sort of going on. I was in radio, you tend to hold multiple positions. So I was program director, promotions director, afternoon host, the person who, did most of the graphics for the website and things. So that's how you sort of, people go, how did you learn that? Where did that come from? But it always goes much deeper than the surface when you're talking about a career of doing anything in radio.
that's for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I mostly wrote copy.
Oh,
I'm
love that.
voice back before I had granny voice, although I could do some character with this. I don't know. But
I love that. I love writing. It's one of those things that whenever they would let me do it, I was always happy to. Any time to find a little way to, use a computer differently. I like to think of it as, when you're sitting in a studio talking essentially to yourself for hours a day, it's a different kind of outlet. So the chance to write imaging, commercials, promos, something.
absolutely.
Yeah, I
It
love to
is.
hear that you're a writer.
It's it can be a very creative outlet. It really can.
It's amazing the people that I'm still in touch with. A lot of people from over the years. You meet a lot of folks, and it's amazing where people end up in different career paths. And some have stayed in radio for 30, 40 years, and it's an endurance run. But
It
the
sure is.
creativity is amazing. And but the the some of my favorite parts that I took away are the things I learned on my own, forcing myself to learn the Adobe Creative Suite. I didn't go to school for that, but it was learning on the job. It was trying to tell people I can do this. We don't need to get someone in Toronto to do this. We can do this locally. Isn't that cool? And those sort of moments are fun, but the that community aspect of it. So I that's probably the one part that I miss the most, I think, actually. When you do a food drive or a Christmas fundraiser or something, going out to a community event or visiting a workplace and delivering pizza, those were really, getting out of the studio was almost the most fun part of being in radio. My husband also worked in radio for quite some time, and he was a producer, so we often, got to collaborate on things. But we almost don't talk about the work. It's the people, right? It's who you're surrounded with, and those are the memories that stick with you, and so much fun because where else do you sort of get paid to go romp around in a parade or something? It's certainly led to some interesting moments, that's for sure.
That's absolutely true. Where did you go after you left radio?
I stayed here in the valley. Yeah, my last radio stint was here, and it was sort of an interesting. I had considered that I could turn this hobby into something more. It was a I had started an Etsy shop back in late 2012, and that was my first sort of foray into, would somebody buy a card that I made on my computer? And, starting out then, I used Microsoft Paint. There was nothing, there were no fancy programs. It was me on a laptop with Microsoft Paint, and I bought a nice printer, and I used that printer for nearly 10 years with that same one. So it was everything was a learning curve, right? Everything about learning what a vector file was for the first time, and learning that I had suspected I had favorite fonts all those years, but yeah, sure do. And, creating my own first logo, or all of, it was Christmas cards. I love Christmas cards, and that was what I started with. And I just kind of never stopped. I I wanted something that was a little different, a little more unique, and I could not find what I was looking for to give to my, them boyfriend or friends that were, something funny, a little spicy, a little silly, right? Everything seems so serious. So I found some really nice earth responsible paper and just started printing cards. And it went really well actually for a hobby. And then of course, as you know, radio careers are quite busy, so there were certainly times that I sort of just had to put it down, and I missed it. The more times that I had to set aside or put my Etsy shop in vacation mode, I missed it more, I think, every time. And as, skills grow and, you go to a few craft markets or help plan a few every now and again. And so I was still always using those, radio skills, right? They always just popped up and helped me along, whether it was helping to plan craft fairs or attending them, how to talk to the public from behind a table and sell something. I came equipped with a couple of those skills and it helped me out. Creative writing, when it came to writing product listings on Etsy and things, I think that, all of those skills translated, but it took time to come up with designs, to write them, to draw them, and to print them. So having to put those down when, my day job got a little too busy, when it came time that I just felt like I was, getting fairly burnt out with work and just going. It was time to go, and I decided that at the end of August it was done, and it was a fairly uh, quiet end. I say I had the last live show of the day, so when I was done, it was literally just me locking the door at the radio station, and I walked out and went home, and that was it. I sort of rested for a couple of weeks, knowing that I need something. So it was a sort of a family decision with me and my husband and the two cats, that let's try turning this hobby into a business. And it Yeah, so here we're about 2.5 years in, and it's now I have two businesses because I realized that I needed more than one because that was silly. But it was a sort of that different outlet. So in my business, making cards and prints and bookmarks and stickers and fun things. I also have my Bake Apple creative business. So that's where I communicate with other organizations, business owners, to help them share their story using some of the skills that I've built up over the last number of years. So logos, website help, and things. So yeah, it's been an interesting couple of years.
That's fantastic. It's taking that plunge. Must have been scary a little bit.
A little bit, yeah, and it's scary in the fact that it's I anyone who's worked in radio know you don't get super wealthy working in radio. So my time limit to sort of figure things out was pretty short. I was very grateful that I was accepted into a program to help launch as a self-employed person. So that was a huge support. I probably wouldn't have been able to sort of jump right into business ownership if it wasn't for that program. So it offered, you know, accountability, it offered training, it offered financial support. So being able to take advantage of that kind of program. It was basically an employment insurance program for self-employed folks. It was incredible. Getting to meet with other small business owners virtually, getting to have that support. You certainly it would have been maybe too scary if I didn't have that kind of support to sort of help launch things. Right? It's the hardest time. You're working more hours than you would be at a full-time job. But I will never forget, I heard from somebody before, imagine working as hard for yourself as you do for someone else. And I couldn't get that out of my head. I just couldn't. And my husband reminded me of that, because I told him it's sort of just, it was this thought that was just living in my head and I couldn't let it go. And I thought, this is my chance. If I just go out and find another job, it'll be another job. But when am I going to have this opportunity to, I'm fortunate. We had space in our house to, for me to have my own office. My husband also works from home. So we need to be sort of, separate for our work purposes. And it was just the right timing to make it work. So my husband finished renovating my office and I worked at the dining room table for the first year or so. So trying to keep the cats off the printers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they love the printers.
They do.
Yeah, they do. That is a great program, actually. Our producer has been working through starting his own business. And when I started working, creating ICMI, it's the nonprofit, I was able to use that same program. And yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't think I would have done it without
Mm.
it. It was a scary uh, leap.
It's amazing though. It's the perseverance that you need to carry on with that is incredible. Good for you.
Well, you too. I mean, you don't just do the cards and the websites. You sew, you paint. There's like what there's so many other things you do as well.
It's I like to try things, I think. I don't think I'm particularly good at any of it. I just enjoy it. I just got a new set of markers today that I think are so fun, and that's my plan for this afternoon. I just wrapped up a couple of big custom seed paper printing projects, so my brain is feeling a little foggy from just watching a printer and doing things for weeks on end, which I'm grateful for. But it's I like to sort of take a day or two after finishing a project like that to sort of reset and get ready for the next thing. So I treated myself. They're these little acrylic paint markers, and I'm just so excited. I have no idea how to paint, but it's so fun. I just love to try it. I think a lot of crafty folk, we have closets filled with supplies that are, going to get used someday, but I have a little sketch pad ready to go, and the little markers are, I have them in hand, and I'm excited. I love to try it. So many people in my family are so talented and so creative, and I was fortunate to have my nan to, um, both my nans were so hardworking, so creative, and my nan on my mom's side, she was um, amazingly talented with grass work and sewing, and she taught me to do with plastic canvas. We did beading together. It was she lived with us for a little while after surgery, and I was about, I think, 15 or so. And at that point, my older brothers were both out of the house, so it was sharing a room with my nan as a 15-year-old. Sounds a bit like a nightmare for some, but I actually look back on it now as one of the most favorite times that I had with my nan, because we just cooked, we baked, we were creative, we spent so much time together. I treasure that, because if it was teaching me, like, let's get back into beading like you did when you were 9, it was these, I still have a little name beaded thing that we did that she helped me sew onto my jean jacket. Like, it was so 90s, it was so cute. Um and just those times, we made homemade egg rolls. I will never forget. They've been one of my favorite foods, and she thought, well, let's make them. So we did. We made them with caribou. It was amazing. Um, those coming from, I have aunties who are just the most incredible crafters, whether it's making slippers, it's amazing what they can do. And I think that sticks with you, right, when you're exposed to that. I think that there's something in that, of seeing people make things with their hands, whether it's my nan on my dad's side making bread. Like, she was the most incredible bread maker. There were 10 kids in that family. Like, she made a lot of bread. So, they're
Hard work.
yeah, I come from a large extended family. There were 8 on my mom's side, 10 on my dad's. So I have so many aunts and uncles and cousins. And so seeing people, whether it's, my dad used to take me out on Skidoo to go, catch rabbits, or we'd go ice fishing. Like, that was, I could never be thankful enough for growing up around that. And I think that just that's part of what builds you, and it sticks with you. And so, I don't get to go ice fishing in Nova Scotia like I did growing up at home. But, even when I was a student at school, my parents always made sure that I had, home food with me. Back then, when we could still get caribou at home, I had caribou all the time. I had to learn to like beef after we couldn't get caribou anymore. They always made sure that I had, char or salmon in my freezer as a student. It was incredible. So, um, I think that stuff just sort of becomes part of you, and maybe added to the bravery a little bit of, what if I give it a shot? And if I fail, okay, I fail, but I've still done it. Even if your creative endeavors are maybe not financially successful, it doesn't mean that they're a failure. You've created something, you've spent time making something, and in that creative process, there's always something to learn, to take from it. It feeds you, I think.
I think you're right. Absolutely right. It does. It does. It nourishes that part of you, that
Mm,
creative part of you that uh, that really it influences everything you do. When you're taking care of that creative side,
mm,
I think it helps in every aspect of your life because you're stronger. You have that foundation, and it helps influence all your decisions and
mhm.
the way you look at life and meeting challenges and you know moving forward with trying new things. There's so many people afraid to try new things.
And you know
And
what? I struggle with that too. I'm really I'm trying to get better at this, but I have a hard time with not being good at something that I've never tried before. And I which is so logically, I realize the contradiction of, well, if I haven't done it before, I obviously don't, I'm not going to be very good at it, but you have to try. And it's something that I've struggled with my whole life of, if I can't be super duper good at it, why bother? And that stopped me a few times. So as I get older, I'm trying to not let that stop me. If I'm going to try painting something, great. If it's just for me and the cat's on my fridge, awesome, that's fine, that's great. Not every hobby has to be a business either, and that's something that I struggled a little bit with. Turning a hobby into a business is that I need to find other hobbies to sort of do that, right? It's when your hobby of, say, card making or making bookmarks or something becomes my source of income to live. Now what do I do in my spare time so that I'm not always working? So it's an interesting challenge.
absolutely, it would be. You have to turn your hand to something else. And I know what you mean. It's that learning curve.
Mm,
I get impatient with the learning curve.
yes. Yes.
I want to be good at it now.
It's true, and the only way to sort of do it is to just practice, right? And I every time I do that, I go, okay, so you did that once, remember that next time, and then I still forget. But we keep trying, right? We keep trying.
That's right.
It's There's sort of so many aspects, and then if you are self-employed, that admin side is tough, and I'm hoping that as a business owner, which still feels weird to say, but the I heard before take those things that you don't enjoy doing and make that the first thing that you take off your list. So for me, that'll be things like bookkeeping, because yes, I can do math. Do I want to do bookkeeping though? No. And there are so many people out there who are so good at it, and that's what they enjoy doing for the day. So I'm hoping that I can learn to sort of let some of those things go, right? To make more space to have more of that creative free time. And those the sort of it's interesting when those business decisions sort of feed those personal needs sometimes of, I'm on purpose doing fewer craft markets um, over the last maybe half a year and heading into this year, because it is so much work. It's in, you talk to anybody who's done a large vendor craft fair, the amount of time to make, they're costly, the travel, it is the long days when it's, you're lucky if you have a helper with you. And unless you've done it, you sort of don't really understand the level of work that goes into it. And I just thought it was taking up too much of my space to sort of take on all of those. And so I've scaled back, and I am happier for it. And I decided to, where do I fit in? And I sort of struggled with certain craft markets that are juried or fitting in. I just, there were some I was getting accepted to, some that I wasn't. And I saw that some were just sort of repeating, like the same types of products and makers and things were just being repeated all the time. And I thought, why am I not sort of fitting in here? And I decided to just find where and I wasn't enjoying the experience while I was there. It just the sort of environment of some of these markets is just not nice. It's just, some of them are beautiful spaces to be. And I decided to just try something different. My cousin is a wonderful maker. She makes this pin that I'm wearing. It's lovely seal skin. It's beautiful. And she had asked me, are you going to go to this powwow that's nearby? She lives in New Brunswick now, and I said, yeah, that might be fun. I've never been to a powwow. That's not part of my Indigenous culture, but it is part of the culture of Mi'kmaq people here in Nova Scotia. And I thought that sounds really fun. Okay, so we ended up with booths next to each other. She knew a bunch of folks. She had done this before, and it was a success business wise. But more so, it was having people be truly interested and you know, in learning about, what it was I'm making, where am I from, tell me what it's like, to grow up in Labrador. What does that mean? The sort of conversations that I was experiencing with other vendors and the people coming to this vendor market at the powwow were so different. And I thought, I need to find more of this. And so I started attending NWAC, Native Women's Association of Canada, workshops virtually, which was just fascinating. And I ended up doing actually presenting a workshop with them, which was so cool. It was, again, bringing some of those little radio skills back into the fold again. And I've ever since I sort of let myself become part of that community, finding other Indigenous makers and people who want to support, truly, meaningfully support Indigenous businesses and Indigenous makers. And it was like a switch. I finally found my spot. Like, this is the entrepreneurial space I want to be in. This is the creative space I want to be part of. And that's seen like more growth in my business in the last year than I did in, the first year and a half. It's been amazing. And how people find you is kind of cool. So I'm trying to focus on being a little more picky about, if I'm going to do a wholesale order, which is a lot of work for a solo maker, where is that going? It's interesting how saying no to things can end up just being the spark that you need sometimes. It's fascinating.
I can imagine. I mean, when I think about craft markets, they have. I'm in Ottawa, so they have several, around. And then I think about a powwow. Yeah, the environment. It's more of a family. It's more of a community.
Mm,
People are there. They're seeing their cousins. We'll meet
yeah.
you. See you at the powwow. You're coming to the powwow this year. Like it's always a place to see family and and I am like I love the vendors. I stop at every one. I'm one of those people who, it'll take me all day just to get through because I want to find out, what do you do? What are you
Yeah.
doing here? Yeah, where are you from? Are you
The
my
I-
cousin?
it is so cool, and we find, just how small our little world can be sometimes, of, oh, my aunt, or my cousin, or something. It's amazing, like the connections that you can find and build. And I did the North American Indigenous Games when they were in Halifax, and I was a vendor there for a week. So meeting uh, families, and traveling with their youth athletes, and the coaches and the teams from all over the country was incredible. I don't remember what I sold. I don't. It was, we ended with a bit of a rainstorm, and I met a lot of really cool people and stories. That's what you remember, right? You remember the the sort of pin collecting that was going on. And so having my little, pin back buttons be part of that was so cool. That's what I remember, right? And those types of events don't come along very often in your own backyard. So I was pretty excited about that one. That was what I was very happy to do. But just that connection, right? There's a difference when you feel like you're in a safe space. You're open to making those connections.
Do you find any of those stories that you hear, do they make their way into your work?
Yes. I think in a bit of an abstract way, but I find that after experiencing something, where you get to sort of hear other perspectives and hear about, the sort of big differences that you might have with how someone grew up or where they grew up, but then you find the similarities. And that, I find, is when I feel the most creative, is after you feel that. You used the word nourishment earlier, and that's what it feels like when you've nourished that part of you. I think that's when I feel the most creative, and certain things come out of that. Like, when I started doing the Northern Lights finger painting, it's because I was homesick. My parents are now living out here, which is really exciting. They retired to Nova Scotia. Um, but I haven't been home in a while. And, that Labrador air, that land, when you step on it, it aches my heart. It really does. And I think the longer that I live away from home, the more that you feel that acutely. So growing up with big family, lots of connections. Anytime that I feel that now in a different way, I'm an adult on my own now, and the finding those different types of connections with families and customers, fellow vendors, that's where I learned that I can still get a little taste of that connection, right? That little bit of home when you can stand with someone and talked about how much you love smoked char. Oh, that's so fun. Like, who else can I talk to about this? This is great. So it's nothing to do with the work. It's some other connection that you can find, right? And as soon as you step off that plane, the it's hard to explain to folks, that the air literally feels different. And I live in a beautiful place right now. The Annapolis Valley is lovely, and I call it home, and I still call Labrador home. That's, that will always be my home. It's part of me. And I was feeling rather homesick, and again looking for, sort of a hobby to sort of try. The Northern Lights have always been so special to me. Some of those memories of when you're a kid, you're out in your snowsuit and you're just, you're laying in the snowbank staring up at the sky because, the whole sky is just filled with these dancing colors, and you're singing and you're dancing to make them move around in the sky. I was a terrible whistler, so I just sang to them. And that was our, that will the images seared into my brain will never leave. And it's been it's actually made some interesting conversations as the last couple of years we've been able to see a little bit of the aurora here in Nova Scotia, which was never the case. I remember when I very first started dating my husband more than 20 years ago, we saw just a hint of the Northern Lights when we were at the waterfront in Wolfville. And that was the only time I had ever seen them outside of Labrador. And it was such a tiny little hint of it, but it was just nice. It gave me that warm feeling. And I had tried over the years, using markers or crayons or colored pencils or something to create northern lights. My brother is a photographer. He's captured some amazing photos and just gorgeous photos. But I wanted something that, to get what was in my brain out on paper somehow. And one day I was cuddled up on the couch and I had my old iPad with me, and I thought, let's try this. Let's just try. And it's not a, fancy iPad. Like so many artists use Procreate and an iPad Pro. I don't have that. And someday maybe I'll move to that. But um I just started using, I tried with a little pen stylus that I had, but I didn't like how it felt. So I just tried using my hands. And the finger painting feel just brought back all of those like childhood good feelings of laying out on a snowbank watching the northern lights, right? It was the brilliance of a color on a lit iPad was so lovely to see. And I just kept trying. I just kept, mixing colors with my fingers like a kid doing finger painting, and it was so fun. And it sort of satisfied what we had talked about before, that need to find like a hobby, right? Something to sort of, so I just kept trying, and it turned into something, and I shared it. I think it was on my Instagram or something, and some folks thought it was a photo, and I was like, wow, that's like, I mean, it's so brilliant. So I tried printing it on photo paper, so I thought I could capture that sort of keep that vibrance, right, of that color. And that seemed to be sort of the missing piece that I could never get with a colored pencil or a marker or blendable paint pens or something. Like I couldn't capture that like light, that light in the sky. So I was just super excited. It was me and my old iPad just having fun on the couch, and and then I just started playing with it in Adobe Illustrator, and trying to print it on cards and other things. And it's been super fun. I need to get back to my iPad for some serious more finger painting time.
It's funny. It's kind of it's visceral. It's physical. It's
It
that
is, yes.
tactile, you know, and that you were able to capture the brilliance of the colors that way, instead of using like a stylus or any other kind
Yeah.
of
And
brush.
it's how I remember it, right? Like that's how it feels in me, is they feel overwhelmingly brilliant. And it's that when I've heard reaction from folks here at farm markets and craft markets and things, and they go, "Oh, did you take a photo of that when they happened the other day, in Nova Scotia?" And I go, "No, I grew up with the Northern Lights in Labrador," and people are so excited to hear about. You saw those all the time, yeah. It was like fairly common occurrence, and these huge, brilliant displays. But that just because I grew up with it doesn't mean that I'm not still, super amazed, and that wonderment. There's so many. And when they were forecasting a nice display here, we went out to the shore so we could get a nice unobstructed view. And there were maybe like 15 other people just at our one little spot on the shore, all just, you hear people with the oohs and the ahs. And, uh, that was a pretty cool feeling to have here. It felt like a taste of home. I will still maintain, not quite the same, but they look very different than they did at home, but it's the feeling of what they evoke, I think, for a lot of people. And um, for me, it's truly feels like it's a little piece of home that is in there, and to be able to try to get it out on paper feels really good. And I just keep trying, but as business busyness happens, I feel like it's been a little too long since I've sort of worked on a couple more pieces and had some more fun with it, because it is super fun. You just sit there and it's just boop 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 boop, and yeah, it's totally fun.
That's amazing. Do you print them as well as making them into cards?
I do. So, right over my head there, those are
Beautiful.
uh, a few of the first ones that I did. And the it's one of the cool things about digital art, and having, I print my own greeting cards, I print my own art prints, and I can experiment and have some fun. This one there, I call that one Scrubby Spruce, because it's filled across the bottom with, I'm picturing times at, my family's cabin when I was growing up, and none of the trees are as big as the trees in my backyard right now. They're all very scrubby little black spruce trees that hold a little special place in my heart. And that was the first one that I had sort of shared with anyone and tried printing. So I print those. And I still like to use a really nice glossy photo paper for most of them. They tend to get the most sort of um, sparkle, a little shine, right? They seem to sort of, the colors just seem to jump a little more.
I love that. Yeah, it would be reflective.
Yeah, and it's so I've framed some. I have some that are just sort of on their own. I make I wanted to be able to share little pieces of art. I don't know. I've always loved miniature things, but sharing little pieces of art is quite fun. So one type of greeting card that I've been making with them since the start of those are frame cards. So I can print an actual little 4x6 glossy print. It inserts into the cards so that when you share it with someone, it's a little 5x7 matted piece of art, but it comes as a greeting card. And it's been a really fun way to sort of have this all occasion greeting card. And some folks just like them just because it's a tiny little art print that you can put on your desk and enjoy a little bit of that, memory of looking up into the sky and that time you were amazed by the northern lights.
And I love the one in the middle too, where you've put the Inukshuk over top of the image.
Yeah,
That's
thank
absolutely amazing.
you.
I love that.
It is fun being able to, this is, one of those fun things about digital art is, if I want to change the color a little bit after the fact, I can do that. If I want to um you know turn something into a polar bear with northern lights in the background, or an Inukshuk, I can, right? The sort of um, world that opens. I found very fun with digital art that way. I feel like that lack of artistic training and skill, it doesn't matter as much, because I can learn something. I can, if I don't like it, I can erase it. And I don't need to have a notepad in front of me. I can just play, and there's sort of less restriction, maybe is what I'm thinking. But it's certainly fun. And then using Illustrator is my other main tool that I use. So bringing those images into Illustrator and drawing in a Nookshuk or something else, right? It's fun to play with that and combine different things. Some of my things I might start as a sketch on paper, but mostly I grew up drawing with a mouse, and as a kid drawing little underwater scenes in Microsoft Paint or something. And so I'm still weirdly more comfortable drawing with a mouse than I am with a drawing tablet. I don't quite know why. I have a drawing tablet. I sometimes try it out, but it's just never where I'm most comfortable. But the finger painting is a whole other thing of fun, because if you don't like what you're doing, start a new one and just keep going. It's great.
That's really inspiring. I've always been a little shy of the visual arts. I always say I can't draw a stick man, but I think probably it is the practice. It's just doing it, you know. And like you say with digital, I mean, why I have to be so worried about drawing a stick man? Like, come on, it's it's just a stick man.
You know what? And there you will find some of my cards that have little stick people on them, because that's all I felt like both I liked the look of it, because it just seems sort of everyone can visualize themselves in a stick person sometimes. But other times it's because I really wanted to get this idea out on paper onto a card, and the fastest way to do that with a silly message was with a little stick figure. And I don't know. I This is why I maintain I don't know how to draw. It takes me a long time sometimes to figure out, how to draw something. I'm working on um a couple of different things now. I've been working with seed paper for the last
Yes,
couple years or so. So the paper that I use, it's handmade in Manitoba, and it's made with all recycled papers, and they embed seeds, wildflower seeds, right into the paper. And I've heard of this paper before, and it must be a couple years ago now that I started working with it, and I thought, this is the most fun paper. I want to try it. And I heard that it was a little finicky to print with, but I've been wrangling printers for a lot of years now. So I thought, sure, let's give it a go. And it is so fun. It is so cool. You can actually, the one that I use the most, it's wildflower seed paper, and it grows a mix of 6 different wildflowers in it. And it's become something like, there aren't many people that I know of who are printing on seed paper in Nova Scotia. And it's been super fun. It's led to some really cool custom design projects. It's led to some really fun work with some bigger companies and organizations, and because they want to find something that's sustainable, that's really handmade. So, I'm taking a blank sheet of this handmade paper and putting my own designs on it, cutting, folding, packaging, the whole bit. And it is so cool. Actually, I just realized I have a sheet in front of me. It just looks like normal paper. Like, but you can kind of see the little bumps and ridges. Those are all the seeds that are built right in, all the little flecks. Those
wow.
are all seeds. It is so cool.
So if you plant it, will it grow?
It does. You can plant it indoors, and I'm a terrible gardener, so this stuff is great.
That's fabulous.
You can plant it in a pot, like in the winter all day long. You can plant it outside. There's 5 annuals and 1 perennial. So, there's sort of the mixture of seeds. So this summer, I'm working on other veggie and herb papers, which are super cool. That you can get them. They have like dill, parsley. I have ones with carrot seeds, lettuce seeds, tomato seeds. So I'm working right now on trying to draw some really cute little veggie characters and silly things to go with those for some new card ideas. And I'm also working on some more like traditional stuff. So one of my favorite foods from home is called pitzik, and it is a beautiful dried char. So when you see fish hung over, you see normally like little cuts in it. So when the fish is drying, they shrink a bit. So you're able to just pluck off little nuggets of this beautiful char. It's so good. So I'm working on some lots of little drawings and things. So being digital, it's great. If I have a little moment of inspiration, I can just sort of either scan a sketch if I find that something is easier that way and turn it digital, or just open up a file while I'm in the middle of bookkeeping and procrastinate by drawing some carrots or something.
That's fabulous. Wow, that's amazing. And you're making a living doing this. It's
Isn't that
wonderful.
weird? It still blows my mind some days. But you know, the it's the people that you work with that are so incredible. Like I sort of have a pinch me moment. I'm trying to work a little better on celebrating those little moments. You know, I like to think that I try to celebrate those in others and then have to remind myself it's okay to celebrate those little moments that, you know, when you achieve something that is meaningful, whether it's helping me or helping my business grow or something. And working with some really cool organizations and that have, you know, trusted me to make a custom bookmark and print it on seed paper for them, or as a giveaway item. Or I just worked with an organization in the province that are going to be thanking all of their volunteers across the entire province with a little custom designed mini seed card that they can then plant, you know. So knowing that, you know, my hands were on that card and it's going to be going out across the whole province, it's and they want my logo on there, they want my, you know, to share that they're supporting an Indigenous woman owned business. And I think that's really cool. You know, it feels like a lot of these folks that I'm now connecting with in you know, after that moment that clicked, I feel like it's not, it doesn't feel performative. It feels like they are seeking out someone to collaborate with, and they truly want to share that, you know, this was handmade right here. You know, someone, me, had my hands on it. And I, you know, it's pretty cool. I'm trying to work on getting a page on my website that's sort of updated with some of these cool organizations that I've been able to work with and some of these projects, because when you get in the thick of it, it's just go go go. And then you take a breath and go, wow, okay, that's been a really cool few months of doing this stuff.
Oh, what would you say to people who are thinking about doing this type of thing?
Just to do it. Um, you know, if no matter what your preferred creative outlet is, if it's collecting leaves outside, if it's you know, drawing stick figures and funny sayings, or
Start trying stick
you
figures.
know, writing a little poem every day in your journal, whatever it is, you know, just do it. And you know, if you have a piece of writing, just, even if you don't share it with anybody else, do it for yourself. You know, sometimes it's pretty powerful to put your thoughts on paper. And you know, I everyone out there has a story, and to me, that finding that creative outlet is sharing your story, and it's letting your story take space and be known. And you know, if you're not brave enough to share it with the world, just do it for yourself, because it's not about perfection. It's not about being the best at something, or you know, getting really good at something. It's just about trying it. It's letting that bit of yourself uh, take up that creative space. You know, I think there's, I when you hear someone say, "Oh, I'm not creative at all," I bet you they are. I would put money that they absolutely are. There's something, you know, whether you can, you know, cook something really cool, bake something, you know, people who can, you know, fix a dent on a car, that takes artistry. You know, there's creativity to be found everywhere. So I never buy it when someone says I'm not creative, I'm not artsy. It's in you. It's just everyone's outlet might be a little different, that's all. Truly. And I feel like there was, growing up, there was always this sort of it was implied that if you were, you know, going to university to do a science degree or something, that the other art side of you was not as important. And I really struggled with that, because I enjoyed band, I enjoyed music, I enjoyed drama, I enjoyed all of that. But I also really loved being in a science lab and doing chemistry experiments and things. So I loved being outdoors, collecting rocks. I loved that. So I always did struggle with that feeling. And I don't know that I ever realized at that age, you know, I was young. I was 17 when I left Labrador to go to school. And I don't know that I ever fully realized that art was a pathway that I could have taken. You know, I struggled with My decision of which school to go to came down to, am I going to do a science degree or am I going to do a film degree? And I chose science. And it felt like such a, this is two halves of me that I'm splitting apart here when, turns out, this many years later, I feel like I can do a little bit of both. And it sort of feels like that's, over the years of that split, I think it's all come down to just combining those back together again, maybe. I will never ever regret doing a science degree because I've always been super curious, which, is another part of, a lot of creativity is that curiosity and imagination. And I will never ever regret learning more about this earth that we stand on, having um, just a little more knowledge and understanding of how our world came to be, how it is shaped daily, how scientists think, how the critical thinking, the problem solving, all of it. It's oh, I love science. And we need more of that literacy in our world today of people asking questions and questioning things too. And our world wouldn't exist without both.
Yes.
And we need science, we need scientists, we need people promoting more women and indigenous folk, we need indigenous knowledge, recognized more. We need indigenous people in, being decision makers and in the conversations, in the rooms where these are happening. And we need artists to fulfill us. We need that art to tell those stories, right? It's so much of history is written not by the people who truly experienced it. And we need artists to do that with us, whether it's writing a book or sharing a painting or telling their story and, spoken word. It there's so much where we need to have those together and not have it be that you feel like you're splitting yourself in two, to truly see both, I think.
Absolutely. That's really inspiring. I now want to go draw something. I started knitting not too
I
long
hope so.
ago. That's my right now I'm knitting, you know, but,
Oh, I had to learn to knit for a high school play once, and I lost that skill somewhere along the way. I wish I could.
well, I'm just knitting long strips with different colors, and I guess I'll sew them together and make a blanket because that's really the only thing or just many scarves. I don't
I love that. You can never have too many blankies. That's
Yeah,
in this country, you got to stay warm for half the year. So
exactly. Yeah. That'll be my thing, Monique's blankets.
I love it. I'll be first in line.
Thank you. And I'm gonna be going to look at your website as soon as we're done. I wanna thank you. This has been really I've really and I keep saying inspiring. I'm trying to think of another word, but it really is I love talking to you.
I love speaking with you. It's been wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you
I
so
feel
much.
comfortable with you, and I love our chat.
Yeah, me too. You kind of remind me of my family in a way. Some of the more creative ones, we're not all expressive that way, but I have some, and yeah,
One of
I
my former coworkers in radio, he and his partner have they instilled in us this beautiful idea of you are home planet people. So when my husband and I and we connect with friends or you meet someone new and I just go, you're home planet people, and you just sort of know, right? It's a little code word of we want to chat with this person more, we want to spend more time. It's yeah, you feel very home planet.
thank you. I hope you don't mind if I start telling people that.
No, yes, please. Darren and Sue would love, I think, that phrase to be spread more. Yes.
Someday will come back.
I love that.
Well, Kachimi Gwitch, thank you so much, Melanie. It's really been a pleasure.
Thank you, Monique.